I'm late because, yes, I did go to Japan last night and then came back, okay? Why? Did anything significant happen out there? Why is everybody talking about my favorite former prime minister, Shinzo Abe? Regardless of whatever you wanted to know about the man, Shinzo Abe wanted people to bust raw. This is true. We are definitely going to talk about all that, dude. Never ask incels to have sexual intercourse with 3D flesh women. Do you understand? Bro, it's literally a repeat of this. Yeah, except in this one, that's a socialist being assassinated by some dumb fascist piece of shit. Versus in the other one, we don't know what the political background of the dude with the blunderbuss was, but we do know the political background of Shinzo Abe. It's a role reversal of this. This happened on TV. I remember the first time I found out about this, I was like, what the Yeah, Japan used to be real metal, dude. They literally would just murk. They have a great culture of murdering politicians on television or in general, like across the board. Yakuza has killed a bunch of politicians throughout Japanese history. The guy that is being assassinated here with a katana is being assassinated by a fascist piece of shit dickhead. And the guy who's being assassinated is like a socialist. You Americanize Japan with guns. Yeah, this was in the 60s. We'll talk about that. To be fair, the same political party has been in power since the 40s, so I don't see what makes Abe unique. That's why I'm saying he told incels to bust raw. He literally was like, stop watching anime and f women. And they were like, no. How about no? You want me to be with a non-2D woman? F yourself, Shinzo. Do you think America's exporting inspiring citizens to other countries to carry out gun violence? No. All jokes aside, I said that, like, as soon as I found out he was assassinated, I was like, damn, these motherfuckers are real Amiraboos. But, like, the reality is Japan kills politicians all the time. Like, that's, like, you know, and with guns, too. Anyway, speaking of Spirited Away, you know who else spirited away? Shinzo Abe, the former prime minister of Japan. So let's get started. There's a lot to cover here. But Japan's ex-leader, Shinzo Abe, dies after being shot during a speech. Trigger warning, I guess. I mean, if you're an American, it's like, gives a fuck at this point. And I truly do not care. Like, I don't have like oh my God, I can't believe he was assassinated. I love him and like how he took Japan out of a recession and like how he really strengthened Japan's relationship with America. Like, I don't fucking care, okay? Isn't that the entire basis of Lib Dems in Japan anyway? Is that like they're anti-communist and also heavily funded by the CIA in the 50s and 60s exclusively so that they would be America-adjacent capitalist reactionaries for the most part. And his grandfather was a war criminal, yada, yada. Obviously, and Japan did a lot of fucking crazy war crimes, okay? Like a lot. Comfort women and, you know, a lot of rapes. Not good, but he was whitewashing that, and his grandfather was like directly involved in that and all that stuff. But like ultimately, I still don't care because it's like every fucking politician is like that. Come on, at this point. Regardless, though, I'm not like, oh my God, smoking on that Shinzo pack. Like, I don't give a shit, right? I mean, I don't love him, but do you think I felt bad not being able, But do you think I felt bad not being able to see his wife in his last moments? I don't know, man. Bro, I'm so fucking desensitized to murder, dude. Like, you're not going to get me to feel sad about a fucking prime minister, okay? A former prime minister of a country being assassinated. Unless it's like, you know what I mean? It's like, bro, 19 babies got fucking slaughtered in a school like a month ago. People forgot about it already. Like, I live in America. Gun violence is such a permanent staple in this country. It's just like wild to consider. I'm just not going to care about it. You know what I mean?
Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has died after being shot while giving a speech at a campaign event. Now, eyewitnesses say that Mr. Abe was shot twice from behind while giving a speech.
With a motherfucking blunderbuss, dude. Blunderbussy. Like, homemade. Crazy shit. Yo, Japanese people. Holy shit. Japanese incels are on a different playing field, brother. They just like...
Now, a man was detained after the shooting. It happened in the city of Nara in western Japan, where Shinzo Abe was giving his support to a candidate there. Rico, incredibly shocking, not just because violence is so rare in Japan. It has been for such a long time. It's very difficult to get hold of a gun. But also, Shinzo Abe, we must remind all of our viewers, wherever they are in the world, that he remains a very powerful man in Japan. He was a hugely influential figure, wasn't he?
Indeed, he comes from a political family and he has been, he was Japan's longest serving prime minister, only stepped down in 2020. But as you said, he still has huge influence over the current administration. So, for example, when Russia invaded Ukraine, Mr. Abe came out and said that Japan needed to increase military spending. And then shortly after, you start hearing from the current Prime Minister, Fumio Kishida, echoing the sentiment. So you can see how still very influential he is.
Bro, the fucking funniest thing is just like every alt-right and like conservative dude is just losing their shit. Like otakus that are like far right are like, oh, Shinzo Abe, he was so good. He led Japan out of this dangerous recession. He was expressly and fiercely anti-communist. We love him. It's like, bro, you're living in Idaho, motherfucker. What are you talking about? Your only experience with Japan is through fucking lolly shit, okay? And now you've decided to be not only a fucking weeb, okay, which is a crime in and of itself, but now you're living in Idaho, you potato fuck, and you've decided to be a weeb for like racism too. Oh, Abe senpai, I can't believe. It's like, dude, what? Dude, you live in Idaho. Stop doing that. Stop. What the fuck, dude? And he didn't even like weebs. So there's that part too. Like, no, I'm a weeb too. Which is why I'm saying, you know, smoking on that Shinzo pack. Because Shinzo did not like the hikikomoris, okay? He wanted the Japanese to bust raw. In the words of Felix Biederman, he wanted the Japanese to bust raw. He was like, there's a big crisis happening with our population. God forbid we open our borders to immigration. That's not happening. But we will definitely try to get you guys to bust raw. Here are some more details, by the way. Multi-barreled firearms were confiscated at the Tetsuya Yamagami house. The dude's ex-military. Here's the gun that he used. It was like a blunderbussy with a, which is fucking wild. He made it with like duct tape and PVC and shit. And he straight up walked up behind him and in firing range and popped him, which is crazy. What's also crazy from an American's point of view, by the way, is that like they apprehended him without killing him, which is weird. But yeah, there's a video of it. He's literally fucking chilling. Here's Shinzo's last moments on this earth, where he's just right there, and then boom, he just gets shot. And I won't show you the footage, obviously. I mean, you can't really tell, but still. And you can see, like, even before he gets shot, because the first shot I don't think hits him. But like here, I'll show you right here. Like, do you see that cloud? Like the massive fucking cloud of smoke. That's where he is. There's a big ass explosion, basically. One thing you got to understand is that like the culture in Japan is dramatically different. You're like, how the fuck did he get to that? Like, how did he get in firing range with this fucking blunderbuss looking ass weapon that he made with fucking PVC and duct tape? And that's because he had to make a weapon with PVC and duct tape, motherfucker. In Japan, people don't have that like cultural understanding that, you know, holy shit, someone's gonna get clapped. The only people that have guns in like the civilian population are usually Yakuza people, and they also don't really operate like normal organized crime operates, especially now, but they're like literally organized and collaborate with local authorities, collaborate with the police. It's basically like a business that takes violent means into their own hands, and in certain instances could even fucking operate like the police force. So aside from like pissing off the Yakuza, like the likelihood that you're gonna get murked by a gun, well, not super high. And as a matter of fact, a lot of the political assassinations that happened in Japan, with the exception of the one that I just showed you, where the fucking fascist in the 60s executed the socialist guy on live television with a katana, most of those other political executions, which are commonplace in Japan, have happened at the hands of the Yakuza. 9 deaths caused by a firearm in 2019 compared to 39,470 in the U.S. the same year. Yeah. And Japan does have a suicide culture. If you want to talk about fucking suicides, I mean, I believe we have a higher rate of suicide, which is wild. If I'm not mistaken, I don't want to fuck that up. Dude, come on. Bro, that's fucked up. I mean, he did shoot him with a Fallout gun, to be fair. He did turn on VATS and shoot him with a fucking Fallout gun. But unlike Fallout, you want to know why it's not Fallout? Because it took 2 shots. Enemies in Fallout literally are famously fucking bullet sponges, you know what I mean? And Abe, on the other hand, not a bullet sponge. Two shots, and it is all it took. I'll just explain one thing though. Like, other than obviously our incredible relationship with Japan that was carefully manufactured and designed over the course of the Cold War as an anti-capitalist force against China and Russia, the USSR at the time, Did I say anti-capitalist instead of anti-communist? Sorry, I meant anti-communist, expressly anti-communist. Japan really did get away with like a lot of fucking war crimes that people just don't talk about. Like everybody always talks about the Nazis, and for some weird reason, outside of Korea and China and the Philippines, but not as much anymore because Philippines is also an island forward operating base for America, people truly don't talk about the horrific war crimes that Shinzo Abe's grandfather engaged in personally that were, of course, pardoned by the American government and also whitewashed by the American government. But that's also part of the reason why he can do stuff like this. Like, the reason why he can do shit like this, a Japanese prime minister in a plane with 731 on it is equal to German chancellor driving around a tank with 1488 all over it, by the way. R.I.P. and peace, Shinzo Abe. You may have chosen some weird hills to die on throughout your life, but at least you're dead. We'll get to 731, okay? We'll get to 731 and its symbolism in a second. That's not an accident. Like, him being on a plane that has 731 on the side of it is not an accident. Don't Google Unit 731, worst mistake of my life. Don't Google Shinzo Abe grandfather, worst mistake of my life. If you're a fan of Abe senpai, you're not going to like what you see in those Google results.
While his economic policy has been cheered by a lot of investors, his foreign policy has been quite controversial. And as a result, some of the relationships that Japan has with its neighbors were somewhat strained as well.
Yeah, our colleagues at BBC Monitoring, that they've noticed that in China, leaders there have expressed their shock and they're paying tribute to Shinzo Abe. But online, they're noticing that a lot of Chinese nationalists are celebrating his death, showing just how divisive he was there, and that he didn't have friends everywhere.
The funniest thing is like Americans being like, but he was a liberal. He was a liberal. And it's like, hey, why do you think people say cut a liberal and a fascist bleeds, brother? Yeah, liberals are like that sometimes. All the time.
Even though he might not have been the most popular politicians in Japan, especially among those on the left, this attack comes as a huge shock. And we're now seeing a lot of pictures of him as a young child, because, of course, his grandfather was a prime minister. His father was a senior politician in the...
That's kind of weird. His grandfather? Wait, what? That's interesting. How does the timing work on that? Come on, dude. You're the fucking BBC. Literally, think. What would the timing of that be like? I mean, Shinzo Abe's kind of old. I wonder how old his grandfather was. What time period was he in power, you think? When would that have happened? Like, you're not going to mention that? You're not going to mention that? There is no world in which a motherfucking German chancellor who is coming from a long lineage of fucking German politicians would never be mentioned like that. This is what I'm talking about. Japan was able to just totally evade a lot of this stuff. And I love Japanese people. I love Japanese culture. I'm obsessed with Japan. Yes, all of those things are correct. But come the fuck on, dude. I mean, Jesus Christ. The Japanese were canonically frozen in ice between 1938 and 1946. Why are you spreading lies? Yeah, they're making it seem like he was a part of the fucking Minions, dude. My man says, so Shinzo was a Nazi? Is that the only way you can analyze like whether someone is good or bad? There's something fundamentally broken about like the way that Americans look at history, where it's like, it's only if you're a Nazi. For all intents and purposes, yes. For you to comprehend, yes. It's not only Shinzo Abe's like personal background. Or is his family lineage or whatever, okay, and the war crimes that his grandfather engaged in. What is significant about it is that what he did in a position of power, ultimately, like I said, I guess maybe because of my love for high-speed rail, I do, and because of how far removed I am from Japan, that I have the capacity to look at this without, I don't know, I have the capacity to look at this in like a less passionate way. So that's the reason why I'm saying like one way or the other. I'm not like I'm not like, oh my God, thank God he died. But I just don't care. I don't know how to describe it. Like, he's a fucking politician in a position of power. He's a liberal politician. Of course he's going to be fucking dog shit, right? But yeah, Shinzo Abe, former Japanese prime minister, was assassinated, a powerful figure among Japan's right wing. Abe was an apologist for Imperial Japan's war crimes and supported U.S. imperialist efforts in the Asia Pacific. This is true. He comes from a long line of like, America adjacent as far as I understand. Like he comes from a political family, and the Liberal Democratic Party, which was originally some of which were fascist, and then also like hyper nationalist and expressly and openly very anti-communist. The short and sweet of it is basically that the CIA had a lot of involvement in the 60s and 50s in Japan during the Cold War. They basically did what they've done everywhere around the world, and they wanted to make sure that they had a prominence and a strong position in Japan. A disturbing majority of Japanese don't believe that many of Japan's war crimes occurred, my family among them. The historical revisionism is taught in almost all the schools and is due to part by the imperialist org Nippon Kaigi, which Abe is a part of. Except also, I mean, that same shit is in Turkey too, so I get it. You know what I mean? Like, Turkey is the same way. The Armenian genocide is not only not recognized, but it's called the lie. You know what I mean? They literally call it the supposed Armenian genocide in Turkish schools. Like, that's how I learned it. You know what I mean? Like, that's just how it is in countries like hyper-nationalist countries like this. And also, much like Japan, Turkey is also a staunch ally of the United States of America and was a part of NATO, and literally America funded and funneled guns to ultra-nationalist militant groups inside of Turkey to squash any kind of socialist uprising, any kind of labor militancy in the country. There's a lot of that happened in Turkey as well. So like, I hate to always take it back to like Turkey, and you're like, oh, well, how is this related? But it happens in countries that are aligned with the United States of America and its imperial interests. Like, that's what America's modus operandi is. And Abe is very similar to that, or comes from that background. So I want you to understand that. And he was a member of the fascist group Nippon Kaigi. They claim Imperial Japan's war crimes were exaggerated or fabricated, and praised Japanese colonialism for liberating Asia from the West. In 2014, 15 of the 18 in his cabinet were Nippon Kaigi members. We can, get a little bit deeper into Nippon Kaigi and the religious cult that is like, a part of running Japan. Abe praised his grandfather, Nobusuke Kishi, who played a leadership role for Imperial Japan. At the end of World War II, Kishi was imprisoned as a suspected Class A war criminal, but the U.S. government never charged him, and instead he became Japan's prime minister. And not only that, but this is America's like original interest in making sure that Japan was a staunch ally, and the Japanese fascists, who were of course anti-communist, were in positions of prominence and positions of power. Part of it was the literal fucking war crimes that they engaged in. They did something similar to Operation Paperclip, if I'm not mistaken, where like the USSR executed a lot of the people on the I don't know. I don't know what the USSR dealings were with Japanese war criminals at the time, but I do know that America took advantage of some of the biological experiments that were being facilitated, which I'm going to get to in a second, and literally took over some of that research. And again, unsurprisingly, just like with Operation Paperclip in the aftermath of World War II, took a lot of these war criminals in positions of prominence and kept them there and defended them and whitewashed their crimes. If Stalin had taken Japan, we would have never had this weeb shit. Well, good thing America took it then, okay? Yeah, there, I said it. The world deserved anime and manga, so good. The young officers failed to stop the broadcast, but they got their wish. After the surrender of the U.S., Hirohito would not be tried as a war criminal after all. Instead, he would stay on the throne, effectively an American puppet. Now, there is a bit of an irony there, because Emperor Hirohito and his maintenance of his seat was actually one of the conditions of surrender for Japan. And at the time, America was like, yeah, no, fuck that. We're still going to bomb you. Because the USSR was going over there. So just remember that whenever people say, oh, well, the fire bombings were happening and they were significantly more violent and yada, yada. And that's why, the nuclear option was the peaceful one or whatever the fuck. That's bullshit. The real reason why they used nukes is specifically because they didn't want Japan to be fucking USSR territory. Because they ended up allowing the emperor to fucking maintain his position of power anyway, to maintain his seat anyway. They literally were like, nah, dog, no conditional surrender, just unconditional surrender. Just kidding. We don't even give a fuck. We're just nuking you, bitch. And then they did, and then they still allowed their conditional surrender to happen. Abe also visited the Yasukuni Shrine on multiple occasions despite opposition from China and Korea. The Yasukuni Shrine enshrines Japan's war criminals, for the record. Another, very American component Abe refused acknowledgement of Japan's World War II sexual slavery, known euphemistically as the comfort women system. Abe disavowed and considered repealing the 1993 Kono Statement, which acknowledged and apologized to comfort women, which was sex slavery that they engaged in. Really horrific shit. In 2015, Abe and Park Geun-hye settled an agreement to help former comfort women, yet no victims were consulted and the agreement did not reflect their demands. Abe later reaffirmed his stance that comfort women's system was not a war crime. In 2018 of October, South Korea's Supreme Court issued the opinion that Japanese corporations that use slave labor from Korea during World War II must pay $89,000 in reparations to surviving slave laborers. In response, Abe declared a trade war, not dissimilar to America with respect to that as well. Under Abe, the government revoked subsidies for Joseon schools in Zainichi Koreans in Japan, taking a hard line against Koreans in Japan. Zainichi Koreans experienced systemic discrimination and hardship. Abe also targeted Okinawa, suffering doubly under Japanese colonialism and U.S. imperialism. In 2019, Abe agreed to relocate a U.S. military base in Okinawa, despite 70% of its people voting against it in a referendum. For those of you who don't know, the Okinawa U.S. military base, the Marine base, right, if I'm not mistaken, is a hotbed for not only COVID during the time of COVID, but also famously is a place where a lot of sexual assault happens and it's covered up, drunk driving, American shit. Upheld U.S. imperialism in Asia, taking a hard line against North Korea and China. He actively contributed to continuing the legacy of Japanese colonialism by erasing of Japanese war crimes against enslaved Koreans. Ultimately, basically, he not a good guy, okay? Not a great guy. I think we all agree, right? It's kind of not good to whitewash war crimes, especially if you were on the losing side. Here at the HasanAbi broadcast, I try to fucking not whitewash even the winning side's war crimes. So definitely not good if you whitewash the losing side's war crimes. You have to understand. What do I always say about reactionary motherfuckers all around the world? They are always the same. It's one note, motherfucker. It's just like in America, our alt-right and our right-wing nationalists will be like, oh, this must be a trans person, or oh, it must be black people. And everyone has their own version of that. Obviously not to the same severity. Everyone has their own fucking version of that they ride for. Hillary Clinton came out, that Prime Minister Abe was a champion of democracy and a firm believer that no economy, society, or country can achieve its full potential if women are left behind. Lamau! I am shocked and devastated by his assassination, a loss for Japan and our world. Wait, what? No shot. Why did she take that angle, dude? That's wild. Thank you for bringing comfort to the women of Japan at this time. I mean, if I say this, people are not going to understand it. Now, we didn't really get into Unit 731, which is important, but it is a covert, like I said, it's a covert biological and chemical warfare research and development unit in the Imperial Japanese Army that engaged in Mengele-style experimentation, engaged in lethal human experimentation and biological weapons manufacturing during the Second Sino-Japanese War and World War II. And it was based in Pingfang district of Harbin, the largest city in the Japanese puppet state of Manchukuo, now known as Northeast China, and had active branch offices throughout China and Southeast Asia. And they were responsible for some of the most notorious war crimes committed by the Japanese armed forces. They conducted tests on human beings who were dehumanized and internally referred to as logs. Experiments included disease injections, controlled dehydration, hypobaric chamber experiments, biological weapons testing, vivisection, amputation, and weapons testing. Victims were from different nationalities, but the majority of them were Chinese. Additionally, Unit 731 produced biological weapons that were used in areas of China not occupied by Japanese forces. They did frostbite testing, syphilis testing, rape and forced pregnancy, and all of that, right? So what did the Americans do, though? Because these are valuable experiments according to, surrender and immunity. That's an interesting word. Immunity? What? These are war criminals, right? I mean, what? Operations and experiments continued until the end of the war. Ishii wanted to use biological weapons in the Pacific War since May 1944, but his attempts were repeatedly snubbed. With the coming of the Red Army in August 1945, the unit had to abandon their work in haste. Ministries in Tokyo ordered the destruction of all incriminating materials, including those in Pingfang. Potential witnesses, such as the 300 remaining prisoners, were either gassed or fed poison, while the 600 Chinese and Manchurian laborers were shot. Ishii ordered every member of the group to disappear and take secret to the grave. Potassium cyanide vials were issued for use in case the remaining personnel were captured. Skeleton crews of Ishii's Japanese troops blew up the compound in the final days of the war to destroy the evidence of their activities, but many were sturdy enough to remain somewhat intact. Wait, what's that? I'm sorry. Does that say American grant of immunity? Hold on. What? No way. What? Stop. Among the individuals in Japan after its 1945 surrender was Lieutenant Colonel Murray Sanders, who arrived in Yokohama via the American ship Sturgis in September 1945. Sanders was a highly regarded microbiologist and a member of America's Military Center for Biological Weapons. Where is this going? Stop. Sanders' duty was to investigate Japanese biological warfare activity. At the time of his arrival in Japan, he had no knowledge of what Unit 731 was. Until Sanders finally threatened the Japanese with bringing the Soviets into the picture, little information about biological warfare was being shared with the Americans. The Japanese wanted to avoid prosecution under the Soviet legal system. I wonder why they wanted to avoid prosecution under the Soviet legal system. So the next morning after he made his threat, Sanders received a manuscript describing Japan's involvement in biological warfare. Oh, interesting. Sanders took this information to General Douglas MacArthur, who was the supreme commander of the Allied powers responsible for rebuilding Japan during the Allied occupations, and MacArthur struck a deal with the Japanese informants. He secretly granted immunity to the physicians of Unit 731, including their leader, in exchange for providing America, but not the other wartime allies, with their research on biological warfare and data from human experimentation. Really strange. Oh, this got to be fake news, right? I mean, come on. America would never do that. They are the good guys. They would certainly not utilize some of the grossest human experiments ever conducted and all the knowledge gained. I mean, what? Shut up. No. Oh, wait, they did do that because they were scared of the USSR, just like the Japanese. With their research on biological warfare and data from human experimentation, American occupation authorities monitored activities of former unit members, including reading and censoring their mail. The Americans believed that the research data was valuable and did not want other nations, particularly the Soviet Union, to acquire the data on biological weapons. The Tokyo War Crimes Tribunal heard only one reference to the Japanese experiments with poisonous serums on Chinese civilians. That's so strange that the Tokyo War Crimes Tribunal, the Nuremberg of the Far East, did not factor in these experiments. It's just, I don't know how this happened. This took place in August 1946 and was instigated by David Sutton, assistant to the Chinese prosecutor. The Japanese Defense Council argued that the claim was vague and uncorroborated, and it was dismissed by the tribunal president. Next, you're going to tell me that the Americans quite literally took, in a secret intelligence program, 1,600 Nazi Germany doctors that were conducting similar experiments on human beings, numerous other engineers, technicians, and then bring them secretly into the United States of America, conducted by the Joint Intelligence Objectives Agency under the banner Operation Paperclip. What is going on? Oh my God. What the fuck? Hasan, that seems a lot like something that did actually happen. Primary purpose for Operation Paperclip was U.S. military advantage in the Soviet-American Cold War and the space race. That's crazy. Next up, are you going to tell me that America also consistently continued to use the Nazis, the remaining Nazi generals, in an effort to bring Germany into NATO, which was at the time utilized to control and kill and murder and ensure that no such left-wing momentum occurred post-World War II in European nations? Stop. They would literally never do that. Oh, wait, they did do that. Oh, fuck, that's so crazy. Anyway, not the good guys. On February 1945, Supreme Headquarters of Allied Expeditionary Force set up T4 Special Section Subdivision. Soviet Union did that too, by the way, for the record. They relocated more than 2,200 German specialists, a total of more than 6,000 people, including family members, with Operation Osoavakim during one night in October 22, 1946. Neither of these are appropriate or acceptable for the record. I don't know why you think I would ride for that and say, no, this is like totally acceptable and appropriate. Hey, but at least the U.S. State Department didn't aid in creating military schools with fascist officers that teach Latin American fascists how to control their population. That would never happen. Of course not! How dare you? How dare you speak of such things? Yeah, I mean, he did this. This, by the way, is not an accident, for the record. 731 is an incredibly important number. 731, as a consequence of Unit 731, which we are looking at currently, is the equivalent of, like the German chancellor, as the tweet dictated, as the tweet showed earlier, is the equivalent of like the German chancellor like riding a tank that has 1488 on the side of it. So did he deserve to die? I have no interest in like making a moral take on his assassination, and I've made that very clear from the jump. There are definitely people who are like, yeah, fuck yeah, I'm glad he's dead. I don't give a shit, to be real with you. I literally don't care. He's dead. I don't give a shit. He's alive. I don't give a shit. Like, he was not a good person overall, though, and also his legacy will be celebrated and whitewashed by Western powers because his purpose was to do exactly what people in his family had done time and time again in Japan and in Japanese politics, which is serve the American and also capitalist interests and be a safeguard in that region against the spread of communist influence. But yeah, this is a flex, for the record, for those of you who don't understand. We need to cover something else. News outlets mistakenly identified Shinzo Abe's assassin as motherfucking Hideo Kojima, bro. News outlets in Greece and Iran, as well as a far-right French politician, shared images of a Japanese man in a Joker t-shirt lugging around a Che Guevara bag and claimed it was the assassin of Shinzo Abe. It wasn't. The images were of famed Death Stranding and Metal Gear Solid creator Hideo Kojima. The mistake first started going viral after the French far-right politician Damien Rieu tweeted out pictures of Kojima in response to another politician's tweet about the assassination. He said, "Far-left extremism kills." Rieu posted above a picture of the world-famous game designer wearing a Soviet fur cap. A Strand-type assassin. The source for the rumor seems to be 4chan. In a thread posted to the Poll Politically Incorrect board after the shooting, an anonymous poster claimed the identity of the shooter was 58-year-old man living in Tokyo who was a known left-wing extremist, of course. A picture of Kojima's face was superimposed on an image of the real shooter's arrest. A reply to this post listed 3 pictures of Kojima that have appeared in every interaction of the mimetic mistake.